Good morning, everyone. I am Keela Taylor, Chair of the Governmental Affairs Committee for the Atlanta Black Chambers. Today, we present to you the new Censusacademy training, and we're going to concentrate on how data impacts our thinking as Black entrepreneurs, because mindset matters, right? Presenting to us today is Data Dissemination Specialist of the Census Bureau, on Nguyen. Some virtual housekeeping rules before we get started. Please place all of your questions in the chat box, and Q&A will follow immediately after the presentation. Also, to ensure a quality presentation, please remain muted for the duration of the session. A brief overview of our guest speaker. An Nguyen has been the Data Dissemination Specialist with the Census Bureau since 2008, based right here in Atlanta, Georgia, and covers Georgia and Mississippi. An migrated to the United States from Vietnam in 1992 and earned a bachelor's degree in History of Architecture and Criticism from Cornell University, New York in 2005. Works widely with many organizations throughout Atlanta, as well as the Southeast region, as a frequent guest speaker at local government events, academic symposiums, business conferences, and expos covering census data. He received the Community Champion Award for his census outreach and education, recognized by the Georgia Asian Complete Count Committee, and presented by the late Congressman John Lewis in 2011. Now, without further ado, please welcome today's presenter, An Nguyen. Hello, An.
Thank you, Mika. How are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for being here. I know you have some amazing information for us. So let's not wait. I'm excited. I've been excited. Let's go ahead and get started.
All right, thanks for having me on. Good morning, everyone. I hope you are doing well. And thank you, Mika, for the nice introduction. I think the way you pronounce my name is perfectly correct, and I appreciate that.
Now you got to get
But
mine right. It's Keela, not Mika.
oh,
That's funny.
Kayla, and then this is a conversations about data, census data, and on Black population, Black businesses, and I'd like to have this conversation and making it less formal. So you can call me Luke, by the way, and then um, Kayla has said, you can either pose a question by raising your hands, or you can drop the questions in the chat box. And then I believe Kayla is monitoring the chat box, and we're going to come back to that at the end of the presentation. So about today's presentation is about census data that all Black business people and persons should know about. Now, there are a lot of data from the census. We've been collecting data since the first census of 1790. But here are some of the highlights. As of 2021, there were close to 50 million people who identify themselves as Black or Black in combination with some other race. So total, we get close to 50 million people in the United States who reported Black or African American. Now, there's another nice thing, and then I'm going to talk a bit more about the Black level of education, but you can see that the statistics show that 90.3% of African American ages 25 or older with high school diploma or higher, and 33.7% of the employed Black population working in the management, business, science, and arts occupations. Among all the states, Texas had the largest Black population, with more than 3.5 million people. And among all the counties in the United States, Cook County Illinois, I think it's in the Chicago area, had the largest Black population in 2021, with more than 1.2 million people identify themselves as Black. Here's look at the map here. We see the distribution of the spatial distribution of Black African American population alone or in combination in the United States after the 2010 census. Let me pause a little bit and explain to you the terms that I've been using so far, African American alone or in combination. Because from the census, 2000 census, the Census Bureau allowed the respondents, the participants, to select more than one race on the census form. And then you can check African American or Black on the census form, and then by itself, you then be counted as Black or African American alone. Whether you believe you are multiracial, if you check Black and then Black and white, Black Asian, Black Hispanic, even, and then you write out the nationalities of if you believe you belong to some nationalities in Africa, you can write it down, and then you can then be counted in the Black in combination multiracial cohorts. So sometime during the presentation, some statistics, the statistics would then show just the data for Black African American alone. And sometimes it shows, like in this case, I select the Black or African American alone or in combination, the total people that identify themselves as Black. And you can see that the majority of the Black population is still in the South, and which I think in District of Columbia, however, had the highest percentage of Black population, followed by Mississippi, Louisiana, and Georgia. So we are in the top four among all, actually with the top three among all the states with the highest percentage of Black population by state. Now to follow Maryland and Alabama and South Carolina, and you can see on the graphic on the left-hand side. The nice good news about the Black population is that we have been collecting data on the population, on race, and then as the political climax and the social economic environments have shifted and changed or evolved over the years, that which requires more need for the census data to collect more information on the population. And then I will tell you why we do so, for what purposes. But I will report saying that one of the highlights is that the Black education is on the rise. And you see on the graph here showing that population of age 25 and older with a bachelor degree or higher among Black alone and Black male and female. So the female Black seems to be doing better. And the other set of data also show the female Black also doing very well in owning businesses. Another set of information when it comes to some changes in the Black African American population since 1964. And you can see that on the infographic on the left-hand side, and you see that the number of Black African Americans participated in voting is actually decreasing from 58.5% in 1964 to only 55.9% in 2016. But the education level is rising, and you can see that the number of Black African American were only 25.7% in high school, but that number increased to 87.9%, and then 90.3% by 2021. And the number of Black African American students in college actually increasing tremendously, close to 3 million of them in colleges right now. That's a nice infographics, and then you would be wondering like where we got the data from. One of the major survey and the major operation was the decennial census, which mandated by the U.S. Constitution to count all the people living in the United States, regardless of their immigration status or their status. We count everybody living in the United States, and the total number would then divide it up among all the congressional seats, 435 congressional seats. In the process we call apportionment. So what we did in the past 2020 census, we would take the more than 30 million people reside in the United States, plus more than 348,000 living overseas, that make up the total apportionment population, for which we divided the 435 congressional seats among the population. Now, the interactive map on the right-hand side, and which I have also include the live link there for you, which show the states that gain population or losing population in the past census. Those in the state in oranges were states that lost congressional seat, because you lose in population, and then the consequence of that is the likelihood of losing political power, in this case, congressional seat. And you can see that Texas is the biggest gainer. I think Texas gained 3 more congressional seats last time. Florida gained 1. Georgia didn't gain any last census. But here's the story about New York, because New York was short of 89 people counted in the 2020 census. They ended up losing 1 congressional seat. I think that's the story of the 2020 census. On average, 1 congressman represents about 761,169 people in the United States. When it comes to Georgia, you can see that Georgia population on the 2020 census were close to 11 million people. That reflected a 10.6% change since the last census of 2010. Now, and if you do that further, and here's the spatial distribution of Black or African American alone population by counties in Georgia. And you can safely say that a majority of the Black population living in the south central of the state, even as the map shows there. But in terms of percentage of Black population by county, on the left-hand side, on the column there, you see Doherty County ranks top, followed by Clayton County at 70% of the total county population were Black. This show the changes in the Black population. You can see that in Georgia, Black population comprised of 31.6%. That's reflected a 15.8% change since the last census. But look at those counties in the northeast and northeast of Georgia, such as Taos County, Forsyth County, Dawson County, Union County, Fannin County. These are counties actually gaining more Black population percentage-wise. And I would be interesting to learn what seemed to be the reason or the motivation behind the number of Black African Americans moving into northern part of Georgia. But these counties actually reflect some very high rate of change in terms of the growth of the Black population by counties in Georgia. So why is the decennial census, or why is this so important? We talk about political power, congressional representation, but the census, the decennial census, which takes place once every 10 years, also determines the benchmark for the population size of your community in the next 10 years, upon which a lot of public funding, federal funding decisions are based. There's a funding formula that where they plug in the population count, and that would determine the amount of money would go back to your communities, whether through grants, investments, jobs, city planning, and community services to youth, to seniors, to school, to hospitals, even college tuition as of a federal student aid. There are some of the very major federal programs that influence directly by census counts, such as Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP for low-income people, Medicare Part B, highway planning, Pell Grants, and housing assistance and Head Start program. During the 2020 census, we did some research and we're trying to get an insight into the Black African American community to see, and it's what's the best way to reach out to the community. And some of the things we learned about the African American community are such as civic duty does not resonate with this audience as a motivator. And some members of the Black African community doubt that participating in the 2020 census will make a difference. Safety and confidentiality in general with any group of population is a strong concern, especially when we are living in the times of supercomputer, smart computer, and AI. And the concern of your information being reviewed or disclosed, or there was a big concern. That was one of the things that the Census Bureau trying to build relationship, build confidence, and put in protection system, such as disclosure avoidance, for example, to protect your information. And at the same time, we respect your privacy as well. We'll talk about that in a little bit about just the number of questions asked on the decennial census form. But here's the thing about the Black African American, there's a positive side that the community is motivated by census data because they know this how important it is to inform funding decisions that help improve communities, education, and health programs. Let's switch gear and talk just a little bit about race and ethnicity in the United States. Like I said earlier, we started collecting data on the population on race in the very first census of 1790, and we continue to do so. And the Black population, and you can see in the blue, were first, enumerators were marshals on horseback, riding in the community and trying to count everyone based on the observation. So you can see there a category for slaves being counted and free colored person by the 1830s and so on and so forth up until now. And the community is now being classified as Black African or Negro is the term that being used for people to identify themselves on the census form among the Black and African American population. Now, race is such a topic of debate among academics and social scientists also, but when it comes to statistics and create uniformity and uniformity among all the federal statistical agency, we're talking about 17 federal statistical agencies that collect data on the population for the many purposes, like I said earlier. The office of management and budget then responsible for determine what is race and how we classify race in the United States. Race then is not based on biology, not determined biologically, anthropologically, or genetically, but race is then based upon self-identification. It's what it is that you feel you belong to, culturally and socially, and so in sometimes politically, what you feel you belong to, and you identifies yourself. So here's an example of those questions on the census form. You got the racial category: white, black, Asian, black, African American, Asian, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and American Indian, Alaska Native. And you have a white write-in areas. For me, for example, I can check Asian, and then I can check Vietnamese. But if I'm a Laotian, for example, I don't see Laotian there, I can write in Laotian. Similarly, for Black African American, for folks that are coming from Sudan and Somali, so African country, they can write out, and from which we do have statistics for its African American subgroups as well. So that's a concept on race. Back to the decennial census, talking about respecting the respondents and not to put too much burden on the respondent. The Census Bureau were asked to put out only 10 questions on the census form, that asking people about the age, sex, relationship, Hispanic or Latino origin, race and ethnicity, and number of people living in housing unit and the housing tenure, whether they own a house or they rent a house. And that was it. We took a snapshot of the country. April 1st was Census Day. We took a snapshot of the country. And then by December 31st of the census year, with usually ends in 0. And we then report the number to the president for the purpose of reapportionment. And now, as there's more demands, the country has changed socially, economically, uh, and racially, and become more complex. And then more and more complex data, more granular at granular level, are asked by the state. So there are public law called redistricting data coming out, asking the Census Bureau to send then this information to each state for the purpose of redistricting. So each state then using this data set to redraw their congressional district, voting district, school districts, and so on and so forth. So that's the decennial. But then for people, a lot of people, as researchers, business people, even us data user, we can't wait every 10 years to get the data, and becomes irrelevant sometimes just to use the data. So the Census Bureau then conduct another program called American Community Survey, which then just take the sample size of the population. So add contrast to the decennial census, where we ask every single household in the United States. So we're talking about more than 140 million households in the United States to participate and respond to the census. On American Community Survey, we only ask 3.5 million households to participate. But we get a lot more data topic on the populations, such as education, marital status, fertility, even grandparents taking care of grandchildren, veteran disability status, and language spoken, mortgage, housing value, and so on and so forth. So this is a survey with more than 60 questions on it, and the chances of your household being selected, it's randomly into the survey, is once in 5 years or so. All right. And then along with that, once every 5 years in the year that ended in 2 and 7, so like last year, we launched the economic census that collect more data on US businesses. And we've sampled 4 million businesses across the country and asked them about what industries they're in or sectors they're in, the total of business establishments, the total value of sales, shipments, and revenue, which I'm going to share with you in a bit later, what the numbers look like for Georgia and Metro Atlanta. Business activity, whether they have paid employees or not, and how many employees, and what's the annual payroll is like, and what the characteristics of the business owners, were they Black owned, Hispanic owned, veterans owned, or women owned businesses, or Asian owned businesses. So from that, we can the Census Bureau produce a series of reports and research and infographics that highlight for here. So, for example, the number of Black-owned businesses in the United States. one of the highlights of which is that women contributed tremendously to the increase of the number of Black or African American owned businesses. Women owned almost 60% of all Black owned businesses in the USA. Now, however, most of the Black African American businesses were top sales or more concentrated more in healthcare and social assistance services, retail trade, professional and scientific and technical services. And as on the graph on the left has showed, about the majority of Black-owned businesses are in the public administration, healthcare, and social assistance. While the graph in the middle shows the percentage of female-owned businesses compared to male-owned businesses. So at the national, female-owned business only at 35.8%, but among all the Black-owned businesses, the female Black own close to 60% of all Black businesses. This is based on, I believe, the 2012 economic census, among which one of the survey that collects this data is called Survey of Business Owner. Now it's called Annual Business Survey. And then here's the data from the Annual Business Survey. So in total, we're talking more than 3.5 million Black-owned businesses in the United States that generated more than $217 billion in revenue. And with among the more than 3.5 million businesses owned by African American, 134,567 of them were businesses with paid employees. But look at the number of non-employer businesses, small business, mom and pop businesses with one sole proprietor. Look at that, more than 3.4 million non-employer businesses owned by Black African American, which generate more than $86 billion in revenue. Now, if we then look at Georgia and Metro Atlanta, and you can see that just in Georgia, more than 350,000 businesses owned by Black or African American. So we're talking about a combination of employer business and non-employer businesses, right? Oh, I'm missing something there. A number. I think I was trying to show just the number of non-employer businesses, which were at 245 or close to that. And then in Metro Atlanta, just see close to maybe 80% of all the Black-owned businesses are actually in Metro Atlanta. When we talk about Metro Atlanta, we talk about 29 counties in around surrounding Atlanta area, which is what we call Atlanta Metropolitan Statistical Area, MSA, which the boundaries were then determined by the collaboration between the U.S. Census Bureau and your state government, who determine what made up Metro Atlanta. So we talk about Metro Atlanta, 29 counties, not like some other agency that you may work with who then define Metro Atlanta as comprised of 4 counties and 10 counties. Sometimes it depends on their jurisdiction. But when it comes to federal government and census and government statistics, Metro Atlanta comprised of 29 counties around the city of Atlanta. So we're looking at more than 262,000 total businesses owned by a Black or African American in Metro Atlanta. But look at that, among which 255,000 of them were non-employer businesses. The same slide. So there, from the census, there are a lot of stories about businesses and economy. And so this was actually, these stories telling you the pulse, the economic pulse, these trends, what's going on in the country economically, or among, how does it, flares out among other racial group. You know, just like the story I shared earlier about women, Black African American women owned like more than one third, two-third, close to two-third of all businesses owned by Black African American. So there are a lot of stories. And for those of you who are writing business plan and business proposal, sometimes these stories help you to get a good idea of what's going on in the country. And as you build your needs statement, and also these stories also show you how the Census Bureau incorporate the data into telling story. And then you can incorporate it into telling the local story by using the local data. But how are you going to get access to local data? And then you call us, and you call me, and I can show you how. And then we're gonna, if you have time, we're gonna go through that in a little bit later on. And then the resources for business people, how you learn about your potential customers. Where's the population shift? Where do they go? What if I focus my businesses on targeting Black African American population? Which county, which cities, which census tracts have the largest population of Black African American? What's the incomes are like? What's the education is like? um, you know, Disability, and then some other social economic characteristics of that population, what my targeted potential customers. Where do I go? So you can go to the Census Bureau and you can get your data from, the decennial census, like I showed earlier, American Community Survey, and a lot more other programs that we collect data on census. And sometimes we rely on administrative records to come up with the statistics. Records based on information that you have provided, businesses have provided to the government, or through the tax return, for example. That's really reduced the burden on the respondents, also reduce the cost of running all these surveys, with saving taxpayer monies, by the way. So these are a lot of business and economic programs conducted by the census. So it's not like once we conduct the decennial census one every 10 years and then we didn't do anything in between. Did you know that the Census Bureau conducted more than 130 surveys in a year? And among those business surveys that are being conducted monthly, quarterly, and yearly. And then when it comes to accessing the data, which is important because business people, we want to get their hands on the data. How do I do that? What's the quick way to do that? Because and then I would recommend the three tools, the most useful tools that call number one would be quick facts, as the name implies, it's quick, and I'm going to demonstrate in a bit. You just go in there and then just type in the name of the location of the geography of your interest. It'll pull up all the data for you in one place. And then as a business person, if you want to learn about potential customer, thinking about opening new businesses or expanding existing businesses, you can use Business Census Builder, which is an app that allows you to get statistics for businesses based on industry and sectors. Um, and then you can overlay that with the Black population or minority population, Hispanic population, or income, and then you can get some cross information or data such as income, education, and even consumer expenditures data. And what of any particular interest in a particular earlier area, and then when you want to dig deeper, it's okay, I want to get a lot more data on such and such area, then exploring census data tool called data.census.gov is a wonderful tool that you should use to learn to access the data. So let me pause here and see if you have any question, and then while I'm switch gear and going to the live demonstration.
We do have a few questions posed in the chat. Cynthia, did you want to come on and ask your questions? Cynthia has some very insightful questions. Okay, Cynthia, did you want to come on? Okay, I will ask Cynthia's questions. Okay, so first question from Cynthia. What are the proportion of Black immigrants out of the total Black population? That's question number one.
Okay, hang on. That's when you talk about immigration, that's a proxy for foreign born. On the Census Bureau, we do not asking about the immigration status. We ask for, but however, we have a question called foreign born. Where were you born? And that I'm going to show you in a bit using data at census.go to showing the population born foreign born population.
All right, part two of Cynthia's question. What is the four-year degree attainment and higher for Native Blacks compared to Black immigrants?
We do not separate the two categories. They all consider Black African American as one racial group.
Okay, Sonia H. Cynthia, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, well, I kind of got to disagree with you on that question about the Black immigrants, because I was able to go into the census advanced data. Now, I'm not trying to,
Mhm.
disagree with everything that you said, because obviously you're an employee there. But first of all, when you said 49 million Black folk here in the United States, Black alone, when I looked it up, now, mind you, this was only the 1 year estimate for
Mhm.
American Community Survey, and they have up here 40 million. So
Mhm.
I'm kind of, I'm kind of confused about that. And there is a way that you can go into the census database and you can look up people by their ancestry. So
Mhm.
maybe I didn't ask the question in a way that you understood it that way, but that's what I was trying to get to, are you doing this for United States or just for Georgia?
Okay. So if you talk about just the African American alone, that's 40 million. That's correct. But the
Right.
number I reported was the total number of all the people that reported Black, including people that reported Black, white, Black, Asian, Black, and so on, so Black multiracial. So in total, we got close to 50 million people.
Okay, because I misunderstood you because I thought you said, on your PowerPoint, it looked like it was Black alone. So that was my mistake there.
No, that's fine.
Sorry.
That was Black in combination. Why is it important when it comes to community services? Especially when the funder, for example, asking how many people you serve in the community, how many Black African American population in the community you serve. Usually, we recommend people to use it in combination because Black Asian is still considered Black, Black white still considered Black too. So you should include all the Black multiracial in the total of Black population that you're serving. And that number usually is larger than just the Black African American population alone. So you were correct. Yeah, 40 million alone in the United States. You can see my screen here.
Yes, I'm looking at it right now.
Okay, so I can go in there and
Yes.
show you, for example, if we look at the nation and then United States, and then you go into topics and then if I go to Black African American, and I have the choice here of just looking at Black African American alone or in combination, for example, and search. And in just by looking at the American Community Survey, for example, based on 2021 ACS 1 year, it's say 47.2, more than 47 million Black African in combination. You see that on?
Yes, I'm looking.
Yeah, and then see the breakdown, the one race of Black that reported one race, two races, and three races, the percentage wise. And I hope this explains why the number is different from what you're looking at.
No,
All right.
this is great discussion. This is great discussion. Sonia H, she has a hefty question in the chat. Sonia, did you want to come on camera and ask your question?
Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes,
I
I
can
just
hear you
wanted to,
clearly. Yes.
oh, great. Well, my question was regarding the accuracy of the census data because COVID hit and that threw a monkey wrench. And I know in the past, they would often cities with large populations like Atlanta, LA or whatnot, or New York City, they would often have to sue because they were worried about undercounts, particularly in immigrant communities and the homeless. Because of their situation, they would have to go back and do a count a second and a third time in order for the accounts to be accurate. Because when you do have an undercount, that means less money for the programs that support these individuals and other programs, social programs. But the
Mhm.
administration that we were under, it seemed that that was actually by design.
Mm. There's a census has a program called Census Count Resolution Program that allows local government and agencies to sort of to express the concerns about the count, whether they believe it's incorrect or low or high. And then the Census Bureau, I'm not really into that, the geography people and then people in the count question resolution program, this called CQR, they actually dealing with that. But my understanding is that even when the census doing the recount or recalculation, they would add it to the total population as an addendum rather than republish the figure. Once it's published, it's released, and that's the number.
Well, my question again is COVID through a monkey. Think about ICE, because particularly with the I'm in
Mhm.
Atlanta, so I was reading online that it was difficult. People were afraid to, if somebody knocked on their door, they weren't going to answer.
Yes, it was one of the challenges of during the COVID.
So it seems like more than likely there was an undercount. And normally I've heard, you would hear on the news about, oh, I have to tell you, I worked for reapportionment for the state of Georgia. So that's why I was like, that's been years ago, but I just don't recall seeing anything about suits as I had in the past. So that's why I was bringing that up.
Sure,
It
appreciate
just
that.
seemed like COVID was so overwhelming that people were trying to deal with that. And due to, honestly, it didn't seem like that administration at that time, that was not a priority, because they were going through lawsuits on how the census was even worded to who was going to be a minority, it would just seem like there were a lot of things going on.
This is
Yes.
a great
Yeah.
discussion.
Mhm.
That's a whole different discussion. Sorry,
Yes,
but yes,
that's right.
sorry.
Yeah, I'm
But
more.
thank you for having this program. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
yeah.
It's very important, and I'm so happy to have found this for what I'm currently working on. So thank you.
Tanya,
Yeah,
it
but on that
is.
note, I will send you also another report on undercount and overcount from the 2020 census, and that would shed some illumination on your understanding of the issue.
Well, thank you.
Um,
And one thing I have to say that most people don't even know what that's what I found, is that most people didn't understand or realize what reapportionment was and the importance of it. So that's one thing that we probably should during the lead up to each census, is making sure people are aware of it and how important it is to be counted.
Yes, that's correct. And the reason why that led me to Mississippi and go working into really
My home state.
impoverished neighborhoods along the river, and just trying to get them aware of the census and how important it is to help, to get the funding back home and improve the communities. And then it took me all the way to migrant communities in Immokalee in Florida, for example.
Wow.
Yes, so raising awareness, but we rely on trusted voices in the community like you guys.
That's key.
And
That
the
is key.
pastors, community leaders to impart that information and to make sure the community is confident in the operation and in reporting on the census, because at the end of the day, all that funding is going to be just based on the count, and the numbers are just number. And I'm working with AAPI communities right now as they celebrate AAPI month, and they're still disputing about the numbers because they believe it's too low.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing that it seems like maybe part of the reason why we're having the issues with housing in other areas is because of the low undercount. I mean, the funding is tied to how many people you count. So if you don't have the X amount of people, and again, because of COVID, we were going through such trying times at that time till, I'm sure that there were priorities in other areas. So
That's right. Mhm.
thank you, sir.
Let me go ahead and drop the story on that undercount story in the chat box, and you can have the link to it.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you. And will we be getting a recording of this by chance later, or is there anywhere we can go online later and to watch this again? Because this is really great information that I'd like to
Is,
rehear.
Yep, we will be putting this on our Facebook, on our YouTube channel, our
Awesome.
YouTube channel, and then we will also post it to the Facebook page. Cynthia had another question. Where on census.gov can I find the proportion of businesses with the owner being the only employee in businesses with W-2 employees? Thank you.
on the census, we didn't specify which business with number two employees, but keep in mind that some of the business reported were what we call commingled data, the data that was shared with the Census Bureau by the IRS. And these data were protected by Title 26, which asking the Census Bureau to protect the identity of these businesses as we commingle the data with the census demographics data to produce the statistics that I show you in some of the slides earlier.
Awesome, awesome. So Luke is our Atlanta outreach resource as it pertains to information on census, information on, African-American Black data. So also email me if you would like to receive a copy of this presentation. Luke, did you have anything else that you wanted to leave us with before I do the closing remarks?
Well, do we have any more questions?
There are no questions in the
If
chat.
not, you have my contact information.
Yes.
What I can do with the individual participant is that if you have further inquiries into the data, and then ever dig deeper into the data, and I am available to work with you. And then I also have my colleagues here in Metro Atlanta who can also with you as well. We can do this virtually or in person. Depends on what the setup is that you prefer. And then with that, I really appreciate you for having me on and having this wonderful conversation with the group.
I mean, these conversations are definitely important, or Luke, these conversations are definitely important. And I thank you for being available and being excited and eager to, get with our ABC community. So before we go, I want to, you can stop sharing and then I'm gonna
Okay,
share.
how about that? All
Yes.
right.
Okay. So before we go, I want to share with you all some upcoming events with the Governmental Affairs Committee. The Governmental Affairs Committee and Advancing Black Businesses, Inc. presents the Atlanta Black Chambers Congressional Black Caucus Convention Fly-In in Washington, D.C. This event will take place September 21st through the 24th of 2023. This annual issues focused trip consists of 4 days and 3 nights in DC. Participants will visit the offices of Georgia's senators and Atlanta's congressional delegation to advocate for the African-American business community and learn about the legislative processes. So let me share my screen and get this photo for you all. So you can feel free to scan the QR code. There we go. So I'll leave this here. Feel free to take your phones and scan that QR code. And I want to give a big shout out to our CEO of the Atlanta Black Chambers, Melvin Coleman. And I also want to give a big shout out to our Vice President of the Governmental Affairs Committee, Dr. Diana Doma. And I want you all to have a good rest of your afternoon. And again, feel free to email me at govaffairschair@atlantablackchambers.org to receive a copy of the presentation. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Luke.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.